Very warm welcome to the program. President Bola Tinubu says the government is considering the deployment of forest guards with better training and modern technological gadgets and weapons to strengthen security across the country. President Tinubu also says the solid minerals and marine economic sectors will need to be secured by a special police force. At a meeting with governors of the All Progressives Congress, the president reportedly revealed his plans to rejig Nigeria's security architecture. According to Mr. Tinubu, one of the biggest challenges that the nation faces is divisiveness, while tasking the APC with working towards healing and unifying the country by ensuring a collective national vision and channeling energy and resources into nation building. Well, let's speak with someone who knows a lot about this. I'm joined now in the studio by Dr. Charles Omole. He's the lawyer, former National Security Advisor to the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, and the Director General and founder of the Institute for Police and Security Policy Research. Thank you so much, Dr. Charles Omole, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so good to have you here. Yeah, so let's talk about all of this calls for security reforms by President Tinubu with specific focus on the police. Sometime in October, the Police Council had met, and President Tinubu said, look, he was setting up a committee made up of governors, the Minister of Police and all of that to actually take a look at some of the constitutional lapses and ways of modernizing the police. Is this his own idea of modernizing the police when we all know that there's already a marine police, for example, in place?
Well, I mean, addressing the president's announcements of these 3 additional formations, like you said, there is already a marine police unit. So probably I'm thinking of maybe the president, enhancing them rather than establishing them. But in terms of the, solid minerals, yes, that would be a new unit to focus on that. And also in terms of forest guards, the thing about forest guard is that 95% of our forests in Nigeria are constitutionally within the purview of the state government. So it's actually the states that
but the states have actually filled in that area.
I know.
We have lots of ungoverned spaces at the moment.
Clearly, I mean, because I remember very well when I was, advising the former speaker, we had a security summit in 2021. One of the recommendations was on the forest guards and how they should be retrained, so that our forests will no longer become, houses for all these, criminals. But of course, the previous government did not really carry that out. So any attempt to better equip the forest guards will be good. But in terms of the general messaging, I think the president has done excellently well compared to the problems we've had in the past. Because what tends to happen in the past is that politicians tend to create new security outfits rather than enhancing the Nigerian police. The emasculation of the police has been the major problem we've had in this country. The last time we had proper Nigerian police force was January 1975. Because after that, the cannibalization of the police started.
Yeah, the E branch used to be very powerful.
Exactly.
I remember after the several coups, the E branch was asked to investigate how a coup happened in this country. With former
we see in some countries where, for example, it happened in Turkey, and I think it happened in one of the other African countries recently, where police actually was arresting coup plotters.
Yeah, soldiers.
So it shows you arresting soldiers. So it means the police were better trained, well equipped, but that's not what we've had. That's not the legacy we've been given. So it seems the politicians prefer for the police to, they've stripped police of so many duties and functions, so to speak. And therefore, it's good that the president, rather than establish, because my sources actually said what the solid mineral people were asking for was actually their own force answerable to the minister.
Well, and that would be novelty.
Exactly. But of course, constitutionally, they can't have another police force. But the point I'm making is the fact that the president is now making everything under the Nigerian police force. That's a good thing, because that's how it should be. Nigerian police force could have special units doing different things, but it should be one police force.
Okay. So we've seen the police actually losing its powers over the years, like you've said. And in this Fourth Republic, we saw the EFCC, for example, being excised from the police. And before you know, the civil defense came, excised from the police, ICPC. All of these are police powers.
Absolutely.
You go to other countries like South Africa here, I mean, the police is well feared everywhere, from traffic to everything. We are seeing President Tinubu trying to have some of these new branches, but still within the police. Does that mean that he has had a rethink that, look, we could actually strengthen the capacity of the police instead of creating separate agencies out of the police?
Well, I mean, from what I know of what the president has said, he actually believes that the military shouldn't be in all the states they are in terms of on the streets. That these are policing duties. So clearly he aims to strengthen the police. How is what we've not worked out yet. But clearly he believes the police should be in charge of civil security. You see, the military don't have the temperament in terms of training to engage with the public day-to-day the way they do. But the police has not been empowered the way they have not been well-funded, they have not been well-equipped. And we can come to all that in a moment and how to solve that problem. But the fact is that the police, the way they've been set up right now, they've been asked to do lots of heavy lifting, but they've not been given resources to do it. And when I mean resources, is not just about money.
All right, very interesting, because I mean, most times you see IGPs, they are always asking for money. We need more money or equipment, especially vehicles, and some of these vehicles are bought and they are broken down. But I want us to take a critical look at Nigeria's security architecture. When we had security challenges in the past like this, especially under the military, the best time that we've ever had serious security architectural reforms was under former military head of state, General Ibrahim Babangida, when, for example, the National Security Organization, the NSO, was balkanizing to what we have as the DSS, and then, of course, the NIA. And then, of course, there was also a plan to bring National Guard in place sometime around 92, 93. This forest guard that the president is toying with, does it look something similar to that National Guard? Or they will be strictly on these forests, and while that of the solid mineral police will be strictly on solid minerals and without doing any other stuff? You've answered the question. The forest guard cannot be National Guard. The concept of National Guard is different. It means they can be called on. I mean, I think National Guard, usually in countries that have it, is a bridge between the police and the full-blown military. You know, so before they call in the full-blown military, bring the National Guard first. But the forest guards, by law, are focused only on the forest. And the new formation of the police, in terms of the mines police, it will be just police officers, but given specific esoteric training that focuses on the challenges of, I mean, for example, an average police officer, if you see raw gold, they probably don't know what it looks like, for example. So how do you arrest somebody? That's why some of the foreigners are scooping these
exactly. So which means they will be given specialized training to allow them to do that. And I think that is absolutely a brilliant idea. Like I said, what is gladdening my heart about this is the fact that the president is doing it within the architecture of the one Nigerian police, rather than the pressure some people have put on him to establish additional security agencies. Yeah,
I mean, very interesting. So let's talk about the mobile police force, for example. One would have thought that instead of establishing all of this specialized police, the mobile police force that's called MOPOL, they could actually perform this kind of functions if they are given, specialized training instead of, adding all these names, except for maybe that of the Marine because of the nature of it.
Well, the challenge with that is that the MOPOL, when they started, supposed to be the fighting arm of the police. They are giving additional specialist training. But the problem is this. Nigerian police roughly has about 310,000 officers. Research shows that about 180,000 of those officers are doing VIP duties. So it means that a lot of them are locked away from frontline policing. Now, the challenge is politicians started, there's a unit in the police called the SPU, Special Protections Unit. Their job is VIP protection. But we now notice a trend, especially from 2003 onwards, where a lot of VIPs started requesting MOPOL instead of SPU. So what then happened is that a lot of people trained to fight for the police are now carrying umbrellas all over the place. So the challenge really is that Mopol are not available for that task you've said. I mean, the Mopol, roughly, I think about 70 to 80,000 Mopol officers. And one of the things the new IG said when he came was that he was going to establish a special intervention squad. Because part of the challenge, again, with the Nigerian police and the way all these resources are tied down doing what I call not frontline policing work, is the fact that when there's a real emergency, the police have to literally go around calling for numbers. You know, calling different divisions, you know, to ask people, okay, support. One DPO will say, I have only 2 men, and I will say, I have 3 men. And then, before you gather all of them together, the criminals are gone. So he was going to set up, the plan is set up a special intervention squad, but made of mobile police officers. For that to happen, he needs to withdraw the mobile police from these VIP duties and replace them with SPUs.
And that has been a very tough task over the years.
That is a tough task. That is a tough task, but this IG, from what I know, is determined to do it, and I think he will get it done.
Well, I just hope he succeeds. Now, what can Tinubu do separately and differently from what previous governments have been doing? Because we've seen police reforms, calls for police reforms, but after all the white papers, almost everything just ends up on the shelf.
Well, in terms of police reform itself, one of my doctoral programs was actually on, security sector reform, focused on Nigerian police years back. So during the last administration, I was contacted that the president was thinking of police reform after the NSAS, so I wrote a paper on what I call the roadmap to police reform in Nigeria, which was given to the president. He signed off on it. That became the presidential roadmap on police reform.
That was former President Buhari.
Former President Buhari. And then we set up the presidential working panel, a working group on implementation of police reform, chaired by the former chief of staff and the ex-minister, the minister of police affairs then, they co-chaired it. And a lot of work has gone into that. What I would expect is that the new government will not reinvent the wheel. They will look at the institutional memory that's already residing, because there's a group already, doing this, and see what they can take from what has been done so far, then add additional tools to it if they so wish, and drive this reform forward, rather than what has been happening, which is every government comes throughout what the previous ones have done and start afresh. And that is a recipe for police reform never taking place. Because like you rightly said, every government have set up panels on police reform, and it has not happened. And one of the first things I did, for example, is to look at why all those other attempts at reform failed. And the number one thing that came to me was the fact that one of the reasons they all failed, it was an exclusively executive initiative. So one of the things, therefore, we did under the last administration was we made it an all-of-government initiative. By then, because I was in the National Assembly, in the House of Reps, advising the Speaker, so I was bringing the legislative angle to it. So we had to look at what body of laws need to be reformed or changed to support the reform effort, because you can't reform this.
I guess it's because of that we had the Police Act reviewed.
Exactly.
And so if the Police Act was reviewed, and from 2020 we start implementing that act, there have been a lot of controversies here and there about that act, especially on the IGP's appointment, tenure, and all of that, with the former police chief not almost wanting to go. Talk to us. Does President Tinubu consider, for example, thinking about also reworking the Police Act, or that document fits the current purpose of the president?
No, that document doesn't. In fact, the 9th Assembly started amendment of Police Act before their tenure expired. So I guess the 10th Assembly will probably pick it up again. Let me put it clearly this way. There are flaws in the Police Act 2020. But it's infinitely better than what we had before. Because using the 1948 Act to run our police in 1999 didn't make any sense whatsoever. So the Police Act clearly is better. Yes, it has some inconsistencies that need to be ironed out. And one of them is what you mentioned. When you said, on one hand, IG must spend 4 years, should spend 4 years. And then another section says all officers must spend 35 years or till age 60. But everybody that knows Nigerian police force knows that by the time anybody becomes commissioner in Nigeria, they're within 3 years of retirement.
Yeah.
So how do you get an IG that we have 4 years, an AIG rather, or DIG that have 4 years left? It's very rare. So the way the act has been written, clearly all that needs to, so the president needs to amend, and I think there is an intention to amend the Police Act to make it more responsive. But the thing is that a lot of the elements of the act have not been implemented.
Okay.
Largely because of resources. For example, the act says that every police division must have a police officer who is also a lawyer. Now, how do you how do you get that done?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, you know,
you go to most police stations, Nigerians are still paying for paper, for barrow, and all of that. Isn't it this sort of situations that the new police formations may likely face? If we have a solid minerals police, you have a forest guard police, won't they be bedeviled by these sort of problems? How would President Tinubu make sure that these new police formations, if they ever see the light of the day, perform optimally compared to what's going on?
First of all, I think in terms of what this government needs to do differently from all the previous government, because we can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. The first thing is, our concept of security in Nigeria is archaic. If you ask an average Nigerian what's security, they're thinking of the armed services and the police and the rest of them. But the truth is that security is a business of every department of government. Every department of government makes policies every day that impinge on national security. So what I would expect, or I would suggest the president do, is, and he can do that by executive order to start with, is to require every policy of government to go through what I call to produce security impact assessment report. So you want to double the duties on imported cars. I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah,
that's a policy of government. You must have a security impact assessment report. And that report, just same way as we have environmental impact assessment for major developments. How will this policy affect national security? Then the report could say, actually, if you increase that, price of used cars will go up, car crime will go up by 25%. That's the security impact of that policy. So the government may decide to still go ahead with the policy, but they will now have time to plan of how to deal with that consequence of that policy. So we move away as a nation, and of course as security services, from being always reactive to being proactive. A lot of insecurity manifestations are foreseeable at the stage of planning those policies. You can see this is what will happen down the line. So that security impact assessment report, the government requires it of every policy and every major projects. Will have to require, for example, you want to build a dam, for example. You are going to displace a lot of people. A lot of communities. What is the security impact of going ahead with that dam? So we need to begin to do this so that government plan way ahead for all these things that will come down the line, rather than everything just being reactive.
Yeah, and that's where lots of people are beginning to question President Tinubu's desire for this solid minerals police and maybe forest guard. Yeah, he had promised forest guard during his campaigns. Because, for example, the government's policy on removal of fuel subsidy has led to a lot of economic problems. And then, of course, people are saying, will you go and now be creating an economic police separately? Because that's what you're telling us with the solid minerals police you're creating. Why don't you reform the entire police? And then, for example, we have lots of scams that are ongoing. People will now say, are you going to create a digital police separately? Why don't you reform the entire police and make our police force a force that has to be reckoned with? And all of this will be, people who are properly trained within the existing police to tackle all these issues.
There are certain difficulties that confront the police in doing some of these things. Let me give you some practical examples. We have too many security agencies. I remember I was training some people a couple of years ago, and I did a simple map. On this side, I wrote Egyptian police, and I wrote all their duties. And I tried to extrapolate who does those duties in Nigeria. By the time we lined it, we had 9 different agencies. So what one Egyptian police do 9 different outfits do it in Nigeria. That is the problem. We have too many security outfits. But this is the legal conundrum or confusion that is being created. For example, you created EFCC, but the constitutional power of the police to investigate financial crime is still intact.
Yeah, very
You created Road Safety Corps. The constitutional power of the police to do traffic is still intact. You created NDLEA. The constitutional power of the police to deal with drugs is still intact. So you have a situation. In fact, there was an interesting case in Kogi where the civil defense took the police to court. That they're infringing on their duties. It was an lots of Nigerians didn't notice that case. Actually, because the police didn't take it seriously, at the high court stage, police actually lost. It took some police officer who came and said, no, we can't let this stand. So at the appeal court, which is where it ended, the appeal court stated that constitutionally the police can do anything they like within the security space.
All right, very quickly before I let you go. Now, who will man these new police formations? Is the president, for example, going to be having people separately recruited, or those who are existing in the current police formations will be taken into these new forest guards and all of that?
My assumption is that it's going to be, for it to be implemented and rolled out quickly, you're going to have to use the existing members of the police. So it could be a number of mobile police units being drafted. They are being given the special training. The challenge we are going to have with the mining is this, and I have no fear to say this. The challenge we have with our mining and all our mines at the moment is that many people in our military are involved. You know, I mean, there are cases, I don't want to go into specific, they are involved. So this will mean the police who are going to be protecting the mines have not only to be specially trained, additionally equipped to deal with anything that will, confront them, because it's going to be a formidable task.
Looking like a National Guard, a sort of pseudo force between the military and the police. But we must thank you so much, Dr. Charles Omole, for helping us to understand all these issues. Just very quickly, the president, how soon do you think that the president can quickly do this? Because it looks like something that he really wants to do urgently. No,
it's something can be done in a matter of it's a matter of weeks.
All right.
I mean, you can simply instruct the IGP. It will, they have a way of, how many do we need? Maybe 5,000. They detach them, give them some initial training, and then deploy them, and then training becomes ongoing, and then more recruitment can then be done to, beef them up down the line. So something that can be done this year, in the next bit, before summer, it can be done.
All right. Well, with the president's attention, especially in the solid minerals industry, we just hope that he's able to fulfill all of this. And for the marine police, we've always had that. And our expectation is that the police will be strengthened to be able to carry out its duties there. But I must thank you so much, Dr. Charles Omole. He's a former National Security Advisor to the former Speaker of the House of Representatives. He's also a security and policing expert. Thank you so much for being on the program. Well, that's how it's been for this edition of Arise Primetime. Do join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye and thank you for watching. I'm Sam Nasambo.